Hello everybody, and welcome to the Daily Splatt for the 11th of January 2018. And today we're talking about The Last Jedi. Now the reason I'm talking about it today is because last night I went and saw The Last Jedi in cinemas for the second time. The first time I saw it was a couple of days after its initial release, and it's been almost a month, and myself and a couple of friends and my brother Charlie, we all went, you know what, let's go see it again, except for Charlie because he hadn't seen it. So, yeah, we went along and saw it, and I just thought I'd share some thoughts, because apparently it is a film that everyone must have opinions on. My own opinion is it's quite a good film. I quite liked The Last Jedi. I liked it more the second time watching it, though, and I think that's a really important distinction. The first time watching it, as you get the initial credits rolling and the music from John Williams coming in, you're sat there going, oh boy, this is one of those rare times where it's like, this is a new Star Wars film, and I get to, this is the only time I'm going to get to experience this film for the first time, unless some sort of horrible amnesia strikes me later on. But other than that, yeah, this is the first time I get to experience it, and oh boy, and there's a cool space battle and lightsabers, and obviously, all the stuff that we enjoy. But The Last Jedi is obviously a bit different as a Star Wars film. It doesn't necessarily follow similar structures. It plays with things in a very interesting way, and on the whole, I'm a fan of what happened. I enjoyed what happened. I wouldn't necessarily say I'm a fan. I'm not walking around wearing a Last Jedi T-shirt with little pom-poms waving them. But yes, it's an enjoyable film. Now, from this point on, I'm just going to be talking about the film and everything that's contained in it. So if you are someone who has not seen this film so far and would like to uncover all its bits and pieces yourself, then spoilers ahoy. So, obviously there were a few things which were surprising, and initially when they were surprising, I was not necessarily... I wasn't sure if I liked them or not. I was very surprised, for example, when Supreme Leader Snoke was killed partway through the film by Kylo Ren, and it was a surprise that, whilst I enjoyed it and I was like, oh, cool, and we got a cool fight that came after it, and it was like, okay, this is interesting, and now we, the power structure on the First Order is going to change, and that's going to change the dynamic between some of the characters like Kylo and Hux. I was a bit disappointed initially, feeling as though Snoke was kind of a Snoke screen. His whole character, his whole Emperor 2.0, his Sith Hugh Hefner act almost felt a little bit like a waste of time. But on a second viewing, Snoke is actually a much more enjoyable character, because I found myself, as watching it the second time, that Snoke was basically just a pantomime villain, I'm here to kill you, you will turn to the dark side, all that business. In much the same way that Emperor Palpatine was when the original trilogy came out. And Palpatine had virtually no backstory whatsoever. In fact, probably had the same amount of backstory as Snoke has had now. The difference is that we have the prequel trilogy, which explains the rise of Palpatine in depth over 3 films, whereas you are almost certainly not going to get that with Snoke. Whether they choose to examine the history of this character in another Star Wars anthology film, or even if it's somehow examined in the next film in this trilogy, remains to be seen. But ultimately, on the second time of viewing it, killing off Sith Hugh Hefner in the way they did was fine, and in fact was actually pretty great. I really enjoyed the story arc of Kylo, Rey and Luke. I enjoyed it the first time, and I enjoyed it the second time a little bit more, actually. I think mostly, watching it a second time, I just enjoyed everything slightly more. It was fun seeing Luke being a crotchety hermit both times. Just a really wonderful performance by Mark Hamill. I I really enjoyed the connection between Rey and Kylo, even though I'm going to say it didn't feel forced. It was literally a forced connection in a couple of senses of the word. But I enjoyed it. I thought they had a really good time. My biggest issue with the film, the first time I watched it, was the trip to Canto Bight, Space Monaco, and my issue wasn't necessarily with the setting, although it's not a setting that particularly intrigued me. You know, it was like one of the joys of Star Wars is all these fantastical otherworldly settings, and then one of the few sort of places that we go in this film is just, as I said, Space Monaco. It's kind of just like a casino with a few aliens wandering around. But, you know, it was still an okay setting. But my main issue with it in the first film was that Rose and Finn going off to find a code breaker, it just felt like there was a lack of... It lessened the peril of that the Resistance were facing. If, you know, you've got the Resistance, they're being pursued by a big First Order, all the First Order fleet, and being bombarded the way that they are. It kind of felt... It just felt weird that two characters could nip off for 12 hours and go to a casino, find a code breaker and come back. It felt just a bit... It made the peril that the rest of the Resistance were in feel a tiny bit less disingenuous. Obviously, you know, they wanted to get out into the wider world, the wider galaxy of Star Wars, to show you know not everything is black and white. You know, Finn has his illusions of good guys and bad guys shattered by spending time with DJ, played by Benicio del Toro, who essentially says, you know, oh look, here's an arms dealer. Oh, he sold all these arms to the First Order. Oh, what's this? He sells it to the Resistance as well. Ooh, you know, that kind of thing I think is an important lesson, an important thing that's discussed in the film. But I just feel as though it was not necessarily... It just didn't sit right with me the first time. Now, the second time watching it, I had less of an issue with it, partly because I think I knew it was coming up. And it was fine. It's just one of those... I think it's a me thing more than anything. It just felt weird. Things that I really enjoyed the second time around is all the dynamic between the various Resistance people. You know, you've got Poe Dameron flying around, blowing things up, including a lot of his own friends. Unfortunately, you've got obviously Princess Leia and Admiral Holdo trying to keep everything on course. And I really feel as though the second time round, Admiral Holdo is a much more notable character, is a much more important character. I know a lot of people, not a lot of people, but some people have had an issue with Holdo as a character and kind of feeling like, why are you introducing this strange rebel leader we haven't heard of before now, and then killing them off in the same film. But I feel as though it was a really good character. I think Laura Dern was fantastic in the role, and that's one of the things that really stood out watching it both times. Is I don't think anybody has been miscast, which has not always been the case with Star Wars films. But yeah, I really don't feel as though anyone was miscast in this film, and Laura Dern in particular was fantastic. But yes, obviously things that still stand out as being great, Admiral Holdo's sacrifice and taking the cruiser to light speed right through the middle of the First Order fleet and destroying a lot of their ships was so cool. Still really cool. The battle on Crate, when the Resistance get down there and they're on the salt plains, and it's definitely salt, not snow. They even have that guy going, salt, just so you don't think this is Hoth. Yeah, that sequence is still fantastic. But the main thing I got from The Last Jedi, rewatching it, was I just got that sense of fun. And I didn't feel the fun necessarily the first time that you normally get with other Star Wars films, particularly the original trilogy, where it does feel like a Rick Roaring sort of Buck Rogers type adventure. And that's not exactly what this film is meant to be. This film is meant to explore the grey area that exists between simple ideologies of this is good and this is bad, or this is right and this is wrong. And I think overall it has done a pretty good job of it. I still feel the script is slightly clunky in places, not necessarily in the dialogue, just in the pacing. But again, that's not something which we haven't seen before in Star Wars. So, all in all, The Last Jedi was pretty enjoyable. I know some people watching this will be going, they watched it and they just weren't a fan. I would say just go watch it again. Get a DVD, go see it in the cinema while it's still out. Give it another watch and just sit back and soak it in and see if any of your opinions have changed or are changed by a second viewing. It's a pretty good film and I enjoyed it. So, yeah, it was lovely to do that, and it's been lovely to talk to you all again today and talk about it. A bit of a long one, sorry about that, but there you go. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all tomorrow. So until then, bye!